Section 18 of Fires and Firefighters by John Kenlon. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Chapter 17. The New York Fire Department. An experience of a quarter of a century as an active firefighter has left one indelible impression upon the brain of the writer. It has been his good fortune to meet professional colleagues hailing from every known part of the globe, while equally he has had abundant opportunity to inspect the fire departments of the great American cities, as well as those maintained by European municipalities. And one point in common he has found them all to possess, namely that they are firmly convinced that they belong to and represent the latest, the greatest, and the most up-to-date fire department in the world, which is to be expected. If a mother be not proud of her offspring, who should be? And that very enthusiasm itself speaks well of the calling as a whole, and is a sufficient proof that its votaries bring to bear upon their occupation all that interest which is necessary to make of a chosen life work a success. Hence there really is no need to haggle over the respective merits or otherwise of different fire departments. The main point is that they are, one and all, imbued with the same fighting spirit, and one and all are allied against the same common enemy. But in the following pages will be found some description of the New York Fire Department, and the writer is quite content to leave to the verdict of others a decision as to whether or no the city is well protected against the fire fiend. Since, however, his is the honor of being its present chief, he must be forgiven for stating at once that it is, as regards personnel and apparatus, unquestionably the largest in the world. And well it may be, for it is called upon to guard property values beyond conception, from which certain local peculiarities are, in a measure, heaped together in a limited area, and which offer to the firefighter problems the solution of which are literally staggering in their immensity. It is well nigh impossible to describe with pen and paper, for the benefit of those who have not seen it, exactly what New York means. Most cities of renown convey certain vague impressions to those who have never visited them, and only know of them by repute or from what they have read. Thus, Rome conjures visions of a bygone era of imperial greatness, manifested in wondrous churches, palaces, and remains of historic interest. Paris speaks of a gay life, restaurants, pretty women, a continual effervescence of amusement, with the serious side of life carefully hidden away in the background. St. Petersburg visualizes mentally snow-capped domes surmounting fantastically constructed cathedrals, nihilists, an eternal carnival of disorder, and in the foreground thousands upon thousands of grey-coated soldiery. As for London, without any intention of hurting the feelings of the British, fog, royal display and pomp, old and venerated buildings, art collections, military music, and suffragettes. Now, each and all of these figments of the imagination possess that grain of truth which goes to show that years of descriptive writing have at least brought home to the public mind some regularly formed impression anent the places mentioned. Now, far otherwise is it with New York. As the foreigner who has never been to America, what are his impressions of this great city? He would probably promptly reply, giant buildings, and then pause. Perhaps, after a moment's consideration, he might add, with a half-apologetic air, and a very expensive place. Further than that he could not go. Although viewed in certain aspects, New York has the most strongly marked individuality of any city on the face of the globe. In the first place, it is as though some giant contractor had constructed a plaything for the gods, and had thrown vast piles of stone, mountains of brick, forests of wood, and lakes of mortar onto the surface of one small island, and had then fashioned therefrom buildings. There is no coordination, no attempt at architectural regularity. The wand of the magician waves, and instant a giant structure rises from nowhere, and in an inappreciable space of time a new skyscraper is silhouetted against the horizon. The skyline alone is worth a trip across the ocean, so replete is it with fantastic wizardry, and comparable only to the Organ Mountains as they loom out of the morning mist in the harbor of Rio de Janeiro. But these aspects are rather for the brush of the artist. There is the other and practical aspect, which in its way is as enthralling. The population of New York is roughly 5 millions, and every day in the year 1/2 of that number are on the move. They pour into a circumscribed area like water into a bottle, and as the number increases, so, like the aforesaid water, they mount higher and higher, as though they would overflow into the regions of the upper air. The office buildings lead the way in the race for height, and story by story climb 5, 6, 7, and almost 800 feet in a search after floor space. There are about 140,000 separate manufacturing concerns in the city area, and many of these are housed in buildings 16 and 18 at a time, a perfect miscellany of diverse trades dealing in every conceivable article, inflammable, combustible, or burnable. Hotels there are by the thousands, theaters literally by the hundreds, 900 moving picture shows, some 500 miles of docking and wharfage, and innumerable ships and cargoes, the value of which it is impossible to assess, and in any case, after a certain point, the mind refuses to comprehend the meaning of the recurring ciphers. But billions of dollars, millions of pounds sterling, may approximate to the fire risks which have to be covered by the New York Fire Department. Multiply this enormous aggregate of values by the extreme climatic conditions, which in themselves invite the attention of the flames, and the magnitude of the task is enhanced. Then again, multiply the result arrived at by the fact that business with a capital B is the magnet which draws people to this center, the hunt after that elusive dollar which absorbs all the nerve power, the intellect, and the interest of the average individual, leaving him no time for the consideration of the casual outside occurrences of daily life, and tending to make of him a machine rather than a man. That is where the carelessness of the unit may be expected to evidence itself, and that in itself is one of the most comprehensive of fire risks imaginable. Thus it will be seen that the fire guardians of New York have enough to do in their daily battle against the fire fiend, and that personnel and equipment must both be of the best obtainable if the enemy is to be held effectually in check. Firstly, as regards personnel, the force is recruited from the state of New York, and since apparatus without skilled men to operate it is useless, the place of honor will be given to the means employed to attract the best material, and how the service may be entered. The following form the basic qualifications. No person shall be appointed to membership in the fire department, or continue to hold membership therein, who is not a citizen of the United States, or who has ever been convicted of a felony. Nor shall any person be appointed who cannot read and write understandingly the English language, or who shall not have resided in the state 1 year immediately prior to his appointment, or who is not over the age of 21, and at the date of the filing of his application for civil service examination was under the age of 29 years. Every member of the uniformed force shall reside within the limits of the city of New York. Preliminary to a permanent appointment as fireman, there shall be a period of probation, for such time as is fixed by the civil service rules, and no person shall receive a permanent appointment who has not served the required probationary period. But the service during probation shall be deemed to be service in the uniformed force, if succeeded by a permanent appointment, and as such shall be included and counted in determining eligibility for advancement, promotion, retirement, and pension, as hereinafter provided. This is sufficiently exhaustive as showing the first main essentials to be covered by the applicant for fire service. In addition to the foregoing, however, candidates must take a civil service examination, the physical and mental tests of which are as follows. As might be expected in such a calling as the fireman's, the physical test is in itself severe and searching. It may be said to be divided into two parts, the medical and the muscular development examinations. These are widely divergent, as the following shows. For the former, the candidate faces the doctors nude, prior to his entry into the examination room, having taken his oath that he is who he states he is, and that he has answered all questions which have been put to him truthfully. The applicant is then carefully examined for such defects as varicocele, hydrocele, or any other kindred blemishes, while, needless to say, any signs of venereal disease are met with peremptory rejection. Should he have any obstruction to free breathing, chronic catarrh, or even offensive breath, he may fail to pass. The teeth must be clean, well cared for, and at least 20 natural teeth must be present. In addition, any affections of the joints, sprains, or stiffness of the arms or legs, hands or feet, ingrowing nails or hammer toes, are especially looked for, and promptly bar the applicant, since they would effectively prevent him from performing his duties in the manner demanded. It seems scarcely necessary to add that a rupture also receives particular attention, and any signs of incompletely healed laparotomy are noted against the applicant. Finally, the body must be well developed and nourished, and show careful attention to personal cleanliness. Following this, the candidate next visits the first physical examiner, who tries his eyesight and takes his chest and other measurements. The minimum weight required is 140 pounds on a height of 5 feet 8 inches. Then comes a stringent examination of the heart, and, incidentally, it is surprising, considering the age and physique of the applicants, how many have murmurs or some heart symptom, which, in themselves probably not serious for most careers, are quite sufficient to prevent entry into the ranks of the fire department. This concludes what may be called the purely medical aspect of the case, with the addition of certain questions regarding past medical history, framed on a plan not unlike that drawn up by insurance companies. The hour for the active physical test has now arrived. That it is severe may be gathered from the following particulars. Firstly, the strength of the upper arms is tested by the pull-up, or chinning as it is called. The candidate is required to hang in a suspended position from the rung of a horizontal ladder by his hands, and pull himself up until his chin is above the rung. A limit of 14 times has been placed upon this operation, which would give a sufficient grueling to most professed athletes. Next comes the dip, or supporting the body by arms on horizontal bars, and then lowering till the chin is level with the hands. This must not be accomplished more than 6 times. A dynamometer is used to test the strength of the forearm, pectoral muscles, joints of the knees, back, and legs. Considerable importance is attached to these readings. A 60-pound dumbbell must also be lifted to the shoulder, and thence above the shoulder with each hand in turn. Finally, the agility of the candidate is tested in a variety of ways, jumping being that most usually employed. Now, it might be imagined that the only result of this extreme physical trial would be the elimination of all except giants and abnormalities, which most assuredly are not wanted. What is required is all-round physical excellence, and to this end marks are given according to the stamina shown by the individual in the different tests and his familiarity with the same. But the outstanding point to be made is that, obviously apart from being in sound health, it is not by any means the strongest man who always makes the best rating. The youth who has been gymnastically inclined will be familiar, of course, with such exercises as chinning and dipping, and in that way will score. But it also shows that he has been in the habit of taking the best form of exercise, and this in itself promises a deal. Mens sana in corpore sano might not inaptly be applied to the department, since the science of firefighting is a profession demanding brains as well as brawn. As has already been stated, the mental examination is reasonable considering the training which is to follow. It consists of a thorough knowledge of the 3 R's, reading, writing, and simple arithmetic. The examinations are, however, competitive, and are rated on a basis of 50 to 50, that is, half for physical and half for mental. It has been the practice during the last few years to appoint from these candidates in numerical order, although the Fire Commissioner has some discretionary powers under the law, and may reject a certain percentage of the names certified for appointment. Unless a candidate has developed some serious defect between the promulgation of the list and the date of appointment, the plan of accepting men in numerical order is followed. In order to detect whether such defect exists, the applicant is thoroughly examined by the medical officer of the fire department at the time he is about to be appointed. Should he pass all tests, he is appointed on probation for a period of 3 months, and is immediately assigned to a company. It is thought best to assign probationers to active duty at once, and in the heaviest and hardest districts of the city. A 2-year service is required in these districts before a fireman is permitted to transfer to a lighter one. He is required to attend daily between certain hours at the college training school for probationers, there to undergo a thorough course of instruction in the use of scaling and other ladders on a building more than 100 feet in height. He is taught the use of every tool in the 8 branches of the service: hook and ladder and engine companies, water towers, hose and chemical wagons, fire boats, and so forth. Besides this, he is instructed in the use and making of approved knots, such as the bowling knot, rolling hitch, the half hitch, and others. Also, he is instructed in the use of life-saving apparatus and jumping nets. In addition, he must learn and become proficient in sending and receiving all fire alarm signals. In some countries, it is thought best to instruct the men before sending them to companies for regular duty, and even officers, as already stated in this volume, attend fires as spectators. To the writer, this system does not appear to possess any advantage. In fact, practical experience has proved that it is better to throw the men at once into the thick of the fight. If they have any tendency to show the white feather, this method speedily brings it out. But to the credit of the New York firemen, be it said that in more than 20 years, during which time over 5,000 men have been subjected to this ordeal, not more than 10 have jibbed. The reason why so few are found deficient in these tests is simple. They are aware of the conditions beforehand, and this fact eliminates the cowardly and the timid. Once appointed to membership in the uniformed force, a young man can reach the highest position in the department, always, however, subject to competitive examinations. In these examinations, record and seniority count 50%, and mental qualifications the same. As regards the former, rank takes precedence of service. A mark of 80% is given for the first 6 months in a grade, and 0.5% for each 6 months thereafter, up to 8 years, when a full mark is given. This brings the rating to 96%. The additional 4 points being reserved for merit marks, Class A or 1, and a medal receiving 3 points, Class B or 2, equaling 2 points, and Class C or 3 equaling 1 point. These points are subject to change by the Municipal Civil Service Board with the consent of the Mayor and the State Civil Service Board. The total strength of the uniformed force of the department amounts to 4,995 men of all ranks, including, besides the chief, 15 deputy and 47 battalion chiefs, 11 medical officers, 298 captains, 413 lieutenants, 20 pilots, 496 engineers, 6 marine engineers, and 3,687 firemen of all grades. There are, in addition, 1 chief of construction and repairs, 2 Roman Catholic and 2 Episcopalian chaplains. Upon being appointed to 4th grade firemen from probationers, men receive $1,000 per annum, being a year later advanced by law to the 3rd grade with the same salary, and thereafter by law to the 2nd grade with $1,200 a year, and thence to the 1st grade, then receiving a salary of $1,400 a year. Thenceforth, the progress of the individual is strictly dependent upon his success in competitive examinations. Thus, by taking practical tests, he may qualify as an engineer with a salary of $1,600 a year. A fire engine is taken to the waterfront and placed at the dock drafting water. Candidates are required to operate the engine in the presence of engineers representing the civil service, and are rated up to 50% according to the ability shown. A mark of 70 is required to pass this test. The mental test which follows is a written examination counting 50%, a passing mark of 70% being required. When both tests are combined, the candidate must have at least 80% to entitle him to be on the eligible list. Or, again, he may follow the main stream of promotion, becoming first a lieutenant with $2,100 a year, and after 6 months may rise to be a captain with a salary of $2,500 a year. With 6 months' service to his credit in this grade, he is eligible as chief of battalion, in which position he takes charge of 6 or 7 companies and receives a salary of $3,300 per annum. Ranking with the latter are doctors, chaplains, and the chief of construction and repairs. Incidentally, it may be of interest to note that the chaplains are provided with a departmental horse and buggy for the purpose of attending fires at which their services on occasion are greatly appreciated. The next step of promotion is to that of Deputy Chief of Department, with whom rank the 2 veterinary officers and the Chief Medical Officer. The Deputy Chief of Department in charge of the boroughs of Brooklyn and Queens, owing to his greater responsibilities, receives a salary of $7,500, the chief receiving $10,000. Since the vacancies in each rank are limited, a list of candidates eligible for promotion is drawn up and remains in force from 1 to 4 years, when the list is closed. This is to enable the younger men to have their chance and to prevent their promotion from being blocked indefinitely. Without going too deeply into the subject of examinations, it may be not without interest to give 2 or 3 specimen questions taken from the examination papers for promotion to lieutenant, which will be sufficient evidence of the thoroughness and searching nature of this examination. 1. Assume that a fire has broken out on the 12th floor in the rear of a modern 20-story fireproof building, 100 feet deep, elevators 30 feet from the front. The room where the fire started is 30 by 50 feet and is filled with a number of old desks, rugs, partitions, and other furniture of a highly inflammable nature. Intense heat has developed before the firemen reach the scene, and the fire has worked its way into adjoining offices on the same floor. A. What are the special dangers to be apprehended from such a fire? B. What special precautions would you take to avoid loss of life? 2. In answering the following, candidates will show the methods used in arriving at the answer given. There is a large fire in a building 100 feet high from the curb to the cornice. The sidewalk is 10 feet wide, and the street from curb to curb is 30 feet wide. A pipe holder is placed against curb on the opposite side from the fire. You are required to deliver an effective stream of water to the top floor. You are using 300 feet of 3-inch hose with a 1.5-inch nozzle. What is the approximate distance from the nozzle at the curb to the top story windows, allowing 10 feet to a story? What pressure would you require on the nozzle? How many gallons of water would the nozzle discharge per minute? And what would be the required pressure on the engine or hydrant to maintain this discharge? 3. What is the duty of the commanding officers upon arriving at fires where the buildings have automatic sprinkler equipments? After the first line of hose has been stretched in at a fire by an engine company, and a second line of hose is required, what do the rules demand commanding officers to do? It goes without saying that such technical knowledge cannot altogether be acquired by practice alone. There must be a sound theoretical training to amplify the latter. And to this end the Fire College was instituted in the year 1911. It may not inaptly be compared with the Staff College of an army, since all those joining it must be officers who wish to qualify along certain highly specialized lines. But the simplest method whereby an idea may be gained of its scope is to quote from the words of its charter: "To disseminate knowledge of firefighting, to establish and maintain the highest professional standards, and to afford to men starting in the profession of firefighting the experience of men who have devoted their lives to the profession." Included in the courses are general firefighting, use of apparatus and tools, engines and boilers, high-pressure system, marine fires, care of horses and hose, high-tension electric currents, combustibles and explosives, gasoline and motors, fire alarm telegraph, auxiliary fire appliances, first aid to the injured, discipline and administration. Instruction is given by a detail of officers, but special lectures are delivered by distinguished professors from New York colleges, while the president is always the chief of the department. As a company is the unit of action at a fire, and as collective work is of more value on these occasions even than in war, the company school has been made a feature of the college work. From this it must not be gathered that the intelligence of the individual is not taken into account. Many times a man is thrown upon his own resources, where he can neither see nor hear the signals of his superiors, and care is taken in his training that his individuality and initiative shall not be repressed. The school is attended by companies, and complicated evolutions are performed. Each year a competitive drill is given, which is required to be accomplished within a specified time, and the men of the company most successful in time and form receive a college medal, while the captain is given a special medal for the best drilled and most effective company. Some idea of the evolutions in one of the recent tests can be gleaned from the following. There were 20 tests which took place on and in a building 100 feet in height and of 9 stories. A. Stretch a 3-inch line from high-pressure hydrant, connect to the standpipe floor valve inside of the building. The outside connection is out of order. Winning time, 41 seconds. B. Raise and operate an aerial ladder. Winning time, 50 seconds. C. Hoist a line to the roof from the outside of the building. Make the line fast under the cornice and on the roof with approved knots. Winning time, 1 minute 13 seconds. From these figures it can be gauged that the New York fireman is second to none in speed of operating apparatus. There is, in addition, a large civil department, which is responsible for such auxiliary bureaus as the Fire Alarm Telegraph Bureau, which totals 133 men, including 30 telegraph operators, 14 battery men, and 32 linesmen. The Fire Prevention Bureau, which is charged with the making of inspections, the cleaning away of rubbish, etc., and includes within its scope the division of the fire marshal, who is responsible for inquiring into the causes of fires and for procuring evidence in cases of arson. In addition, there is a large Bureau of Repairs and Supplies, which totals no less than 251 employees, ranging from clerks and stenographers to painters and even a sailmaker. The administrative head of this vast organization is the Fire Commissioner, who is a nominee of and appointed by the mayor. In fact, he may not inaptly be compared with the departmental secretaries of any national administration. That is to say, with a change of municipal government, ipso facto he vacates his position. Quarters are provided for all members of the uniformed force at the stations to which they are attached, 4 hours daily being allowed for meals. In addition, every fireman is entitled to 14 consecutive days vacation leave in the year, together with 24 hours each fifth day, while company commanders have it in their power to grant extra leave of 12 hours 4 times each month, should the exigencies of the service permit. The regulations regarding pensions are both comprehensive and generous. Any officer or member of the uniformed force who may, upon an examination by medical officers, be found to be disqualified, physically or mentally, from the performance of his duties, shall be retired from the service, and shall receive an annual allowance as pension in case of total disqualification, or as compensation for limited service in the case of partial disability. In case of total and permanent disability caused or induced by the actual performance of the duties of his position, or which may occur after 10 years active and continuous service, the amount of annual pension allowed shall be 1/2 of the yearly compensation given as salary at the date of his retirement from the service, or such less sum in proportion to the number so retired as the condition of the fund will warrant. This fund is formed of certain revenues allocated for this purpose, and any deficit is supplied by an appropriation from the city. In any case, widows and children of men killed in the execution of their duties are cared for, and members wishing to retire after a period of 20 years' service receive a pension equal to 1/2 of their salary. The city of New York is divided into 5 boroughs: Manhattan, the Bronx, Richmond, Brooklyn, and Queens, the 2 former being separated from the 3rd by the Bay, and from the 4th and 5th by the East River. For fire protection, the department consists of 298 companies, equipped with 877 pieces of apparatus, including engines, hose wagons, hook and ladder trucks, fire boats, searchlight engines, water towers, etc. Motorization of all apparatus is proceeding rapidly, and by the end of 1914 the horse will be practically superseded. Of the operations of the department as a whole, some idea may be gleaned from the fact that between January 9th and March 1st, 1912, New York literally burned day and night. One period of 24 hours in February of that year witnessed 100 calls. This tremendous activity on the part of the fire fiend was due to some extent to the extreme cold, the thermometer registering 0 practically the entire time. But judging from the revelations recently made, the firebug played no inconspicuous part in this state of affairs. It is the custom of the New York Fire Department never to leave a fire station uncovered, and in case of outbreaks of any magnitude, apparatus from distant stations takes up its position in the station vacated. This system will be understood by an examination of the accompanying card. All companies in the first horizontal line respond on the first alarm, that is, when the street alarm is pulled by a citizen or a policeman. All companies and officers on the second line respond on the second alarm, which is transmitted in the following manner: Should the chief in charge at a fire find the outbreak to be beyond the control of the apparatus of the first assignment, he then orders the transmission of a second or third alarm. This is always done by an officer or by an aide to the chief officer, for though the alarm box may be opened and pulled by a citizen, in order to send additional calls, an inner door must be opened, to which none but officers or aides have access. The mechanism within this door resembles the apparatus in use in a telegraph office, and the officer will send in his call by tapping 22279, meaning a second alarm at station 279. A third, fourth, or fifth alarm is sent in the same manner, merely changing 22 to 33, and so on. It will be seen by the card that on the third alarm, in this instance, Engine Company 16 takes the places of Engine Company 17 in the latter's station, and Engine Company 26 fills up the gap left by Engine Company 14. Similar changes occur on the fifth alarm, and Hook and Ladder Company 21 covers in for Hook and Ladder Company 3. If the fire happened to be of such magnitude as to demand an even greater force than would respond on the fifth alarm, distant companies in the same borough can be summoned by sending what is known as a simultaneous call, or what firemen term the 2 nines. The call is, to give an example, 99279-33582. This means that all companies due on the third alarm at signal box 582 would immediately respond with all apparatus to signal box 279. In lieu of this can be sent the borough call, which has exactly the same effect, but the signal is varied to denote the borough from which the apparatus is required, which, in the case of the Equitable fire, was Brooklyn. In this instance, it will be readily understood that there is no object in sending 5 miles north on Manhattan Island for companies when the same force was just 1 mile away across the Brooklyn Bridge. Should the borough call be used, it would be 77279-33394, indicating that the companies assigned on the third alarm at Station 394 Borough of Brooklyn would immediately respond to Station 279 Borough of Manhattan. 66 denotes Manhattan, 77 denotes Brooklyn, and 88 Richmond. There are 3,176 street fire alarm boxes, and roughly over 5,500 special and automatic signal boxes located in factories, public buildings, theaters, etc., and approximately 1,969 miles of underground conductors, while by the end of 1914, the 2,530 miles of overhead cables will also be laid in the former way. The fire alarm stations are situated as far distant from the scene of any possible outbreak as is practicable, those at present in the course of construction being located in the public parks of the various boroughs. The department is housed in 326 buildings, and every year sees an addition to their number. In 1912, there were 15,633 fires, as against 13,868 in the previous year, the total fire loss for the former year being $9,069,580, as against $12,470,806 for the latter. Occasionally, in the preceding pages, the reader may have thought that the writer was complaining of the position held by the firemen in the public esteem. Certainly it is true that the profession is of modern growth, and as such has not behind it those centuries of glorious record which make citizens of every nation proud of their army and navy. But inasmuch as New York possesses the largest fire department in the world, and inasmuch as its uniformed force is called upon to combat a greater fire risk than anywhere to be found, then most assuredly is this fact recognized by its inhabitants, It is no exaggeration to say that no force in the United States, federal, state, or municipal, stands in more sympathetic relationship to the public. An English friend of the writer's, who knew the department well, was asked what he thought of it as a whole. He replied, "Well, the greatest compliment I can pay is to put them on the same plane with the London police, whom I consider the most efficient, best-mannered, and with all the kindliest force it is possible to imagine." It goes without saying that the writer is proud of his command, proud of their actions, which are engraved in the hearts of the people, and proud to think that Providence has permitted him to be their chief. End of section 18. Recording by Maria Casper.